I'm Edie Lush, Executive Editor at Hub Culture, and it is Davos. It's 2026. I'm outside in my studio with Dr. Lauri Union. How are you?
Oh, I'm fabulous. Thank you so much for inviting me to this conversation.
Pleasure. Adjunct Faculty at Babson College, and you're an expert in family businesses. We're going to get to what you do in a little bit, but I want you to set the context of why thinking about family and family business is important in a place like Davos, where most people have this idea that this is about giant, huge companies and billionaires.
Yes, so that's such a great question. So family businesses actually create 70% of global GDP. They account for 81% of all businesses in the world, and they even drive 75% of startups. Many people aren't aware of that, but they are the underlying driving force in the global economy.
So that is pretty surprising. You cannot walk down the promenade with being hit with artificial intelligence, and there's been a lot of discussion about job losses, about disruption to creativity. Tell me a little about how you think family businesses need to grapple with this question.
Yes, so there are some reasons why family businesses have maintained 70% of global GDP, but from my perspective, those things will not suffice in the age of AI. And the reason why is that family firms tend to be a bit slower to make change. And at this point, change is accelerating. There are reasons why that's the case, which we can understand from perspective of my work and my research. Family systems theory.
Why are they slower to change?
Okay, they're slower to change for a couple of reasons. So one is that if we look at ideas from family systems theory, families tend towards something called homeostasis. That means resistance to change. That protects the family. But the thing is that it also impacts the business, right? So it impacts innovation.
So tell me, what can families do differently? How can they stand up or change faster in the face of AI?
Yeah, so what families really need to do is they need to understand better both their family communication patterns and how they can do something called rewiring their brain.
Okay,
so
how do we do that? I want to rewire my brain. Tell me more about that, because I know that you have a doctorate in the neuroscience of learning. You're an expert in this. How can people do this?
Yes, so it really involves a process grounded in neuroscience of learning. So it requires a specific set of regular practice over a period of time, using focusing on the key specific behaviors and mindsets that are coming out of my research. And what I always encourage families and individuals to understand is two things. One is that when it comes to that family dynamic and trying to get to better outcomes, it really only takes one person in the family to begin to make changes to ultimately get to those better outcomes. And that change is and should be slow. So people should think 1%. So 1% better, 1% better. But just like with compound interest, that 1% over time, suddenly it adds up. And we have a new platform for the family and for the business, where there's more creativity and innovation, where the family relationships are healthier, and where individuals have more satisfying work.
So the World Economic Forum has brought together leaders from all walks of life. Leaders, political, they're managing large enterprises. I wonder where family businesses do better than large corporations when it comes to decision making or adaptability.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So family firms have historically been successful because they can really take a long-term vision, long-term perspective. They can invest over the long term. They're not reliant on performance every quarter. In addition, family firms can draw on their historical knowledge base, right? So we can call it the tacit knowledge. So it's a knowledge that you only get from doing something. This is gold for families. So some of the reasons why I am concerned that these things will not be sufficient going forward is that we need to connect more the younger and older generation to be able to make the kinds of rapid changes that are needed. And we also, in addition to that, we simply need to strengthen the capacity overall of the family to collaborate, make good decisions together without allowing the family dynamics to interfere with that capacity just to think clearly, to make clear decisions, to not let a conversation become something that's taken personally. We need to increase the capacity to do that so that family firms can move faster.
So I imagine that that's one of the great strengths of a family business is having the different generations, but I can also understand how different generations might see the world differently and might communicate differently and might not understand how the younger generation, I imagine that was always the case, but I think in this age where we know from the Edelman Trust Barometer that that sort of feeling very distant and dislocated and lonely has become more prevalent, that I imagine that can be a real struggle for some family businesses.
Yes, exactly right. So, in family firms, one of the challenges is when there are kind of dissonant conversations. And there's also, I mentioned this idea of homeostasis earlier, right? So there's often the idea that the next generation needs to join the existing family business.
Right.
But, in today's era, that almost seems like outdated, right? Because maybe that existing business needs to be transformed. Maybe that existing business perhaps even needs to be sold and the family should invest in something else. So the idea is to pass on the family's capacity for value creation and entrepreneurship rather than perhaps trying to pass on a business as is. And furthermore, research shows that when people are intrinsically motivated, they do their best work. So trying to fit the next generation into the older generation's shoes may not be the best way to accomplish that.
Thank you very much for stopping by the Hub Culture studio here in Davos, and I'm Edie Lush.
Thank you so much.